My wife told me to send my 7-year-old daughter away to boarding school because she wanted us to focus on our real biological family. When I said no, she looked me in the eye and said, "Then choose me or her." That was the moment everything in my life shattered. Let me tell you what really happened. And please, if this story touches you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Mark. I'm 35 years old, and I live in Oregon. I've been a single father since the day my daughter, Ella, was born. Her mother, my first wife, died giving birth to her. It happened so fast. One moment we were waiting to become a family, and the next, I was alone with a newborn baby in my arms. Those first few years were hard. I was scared all the time. I didn't know how to raise a baby by myself, but I gave it everything I had. I fed her, bathed her, changed her diapers, held her when she cried. She was the reason I kept going. I didn't care if I was exhausted or broke. I just wanted her to feel safe and loved. We were close. Really close. It was always just the two of us. We had our own little routines, our own jokes. Every night, she'd fall asleep holding my hand. When Ella was about 5, I met someone. Her name was Sarah. She worked in the same building as me. She was beautiful, smart, and had this way of making me feel like maybe life could be okay again. She didn't seem to mind that I was a single dad. She asked about Ella, even brought her little gifts when she came over. At first, I thought everything was fine. Ella was shy around her, but always tried to be friendly. She would draw Sarah pictures and help set the table when she came over. I could tell Ella was trying to make her feel welcome. After a year, I asked Sarah to marry me. We kept it simple, small wedding, a few close friends. Ella walked down the aisle with a basket of flowers. She was smiling from ear to ear. But after we got married, Sarah began to change. She didn't talk to Ella much. She never yelled, but there was this coldness, like Ella was just in the way. If Ella wanted to sit with us during a movie, Sarah would make an excuse and walk out of the room. One time, Ella spilled juice on the couch by accident. She was only 6. Sarah snapped at her and told her to stop acting like a baby. Ella just stood there, silent, eyes full of tears. I tried to smooth it over, but in that moment I knew something wasn't right, and it was only going to get worse. In the beginning, everything seemed okay. Our new life as a family felt calm. Not perfect, but calm. Sarah and I had moved into a small house together. Ella got her own room with the same nightlight she always used. Sarah decorated the living room with her modern taste, and I added a few family photos. One of Ella and me at the zoo, one of us baking cookies covered in flour. I remember Sarah smiled politely when I put them up, but something about her smile didn't reach her eyes. Still, I told myself it was just an adjustment. We were all learning how to live together. The first few months were mostly peaceful. Sarah was respectful, if not warm. She didn't try to take on a mother role, which I understood. Ella, for her part, was hopeful. She wanted things to work. She'd make little drawings for Sarah and leave them on her pillow. One time, she made a card that said, "I'm happy you married my daddy," with 2 stick figures holding hands and a small red heart. Sarah thanked her, but she didn't put the card up anywhere. A few days later, I found it stuffed into a drawer in her nightstand. I ignored it. I kept telling myself that families take time. Sarah hadn't signed up to be a mother, after all. I thought maybe she just didn't know how to connect with a child who wasn't hers. But the more I ignored it, the clearer it became. Sarah didn't dislike Ella, she resented her. At the dinner table, if Ella tried to join a conversation, Sarah would act distracted or cut her off. If I laughed at something Ella said, Sarah's expression would tighten for just a second. She never said anything cruel, just small comments. A look here, a sigh there. Once, Ella ran to me after school, excited about a sticker she got from her teacher. She showed Sarah, beaming. Sarah looked up from her phone and said, "That's nice, but you're supposed to get stickers for doing well. It's not that special." Ella's face fell. I reached for her hand and smiled, trying to keep her mood up. But inside, I was getting worried. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to accuse Sarah of anything that might make her feel unwelcome in her own home. I thought maybe she just needed more time. But then she started dropping hints. One night, while we were watching TV, she said, "Do you ever think about what it would be like to start fresh? Just you and me, maybe a baby." I was quiet. She turned toward me, smiling. "I mean, wouldn't it be nice to have our own child someday? Raise someone that's ours." I said, "Ella is mine. And if we ever have another child, they'd both be ours." She didn't reply, just nodded and turned back to the screen. Another time, she brought up boarding schools. Out of nowhere, said she'd read an article about how independent it makes kids. "Especially kids who've had a rough start in life," she added, looking right at me. I told her Ella was too young, that she needed to be home, to feel safe, not sent away. Sarah just shrugged and said, "Just something to think about. You want her to grow up strong, right?" It became more and more obvious. Sarah didn't want to be part of this family. She wanted her own version of one. But I still wasn't ready to admit it. I still believed things could turn around. I thought if I worked harder, balanced more, maybe we could all fit together somehow. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet. Over time, Sarah's coldness toward Ella stopped being subtle. It became obvious, sharp enough that even a stranger would notice. And worst of all, it felt like she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Ella used to try so hard to win Sarah over. She'd ask if she could help set the table or fold laundry. She would even ask me things like, "Do you think Sarah liked my drawing?" But after a while, she stopped trying. She stopped asking. She just went quiet. I started noticing how Sarah treated her differently than everyone else. When we had guests over, Sarah would act sweet, laughing, joking, smiling like everything was perfect. But the moment we were alone, her whole mood would shift. There were comments. Little jabs that didn't sound terrible at first, but cut deep if you listened closely. "Oh, Ella, again with the crumbs? You really don't pay attention, do you?" Or, "Maybe if someone spent less time drawing and more time learning manners." Once, we were going to a friend's barbecue. Sarah told me there wasn't room in the car for all of us because she had picked up a friend to ride with us. I asked what we should do about Ella. Sarah just said, "Can't your parents take her for the day or something? It's not like she'll have fun there anyway." I told her no. Of course Ella was coming. Sarah rolled her eyes and said, "Fine. Then you drive separately." So I did. Ella and I drove behind them the whole way. She sat in the back seat looking out the window, quiet, holding her stuffed cat in her lap the whole time. She didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. At night, after Ella went to sleep, I tried to bring it up. I told Sarah I felt like something was off, that she didn't seem to care for Ella much anymore. She looked at me with this blank expression and said, "What are you even talking about?" I said, "You leave her out of things. You talk down to her. You treat her like she's not part of this family." Sarah laughed. Not a warm laugh. A cold one. "Wow," she said. "So now I'm the bad guy? Because I'm not fake and sugary with a kid who barely talks to me." I told her Ella doesn't talk because she's scared, because she can feel the way Sarah looks at her. She just shook her head and said, "You're making stuff up. You're just paranoid. You're always reading into things. You always take her side." That night, I sat awake for hours. Something about the way she turned it around on me. It messed with my head. I started questioning myself. Was I being too sensitive? Was I imagining the tension? But then I saw how Ella was changing. She used to sing in the car. Now she stared out the window. She used to run to me when I got home from work. Now she just looked up from whatever corner she was sitting in and gave a small smile. She started saying things like, "Daddy, are you mad at me?" Even when nothing had happened. I started finding her asleep in strange places, on the floor beside her bed, curled up on the couch, sometimes even in the hallway outside my room, like she didn't know where she was supposed to feel safe. I asked her once if something had happened with Sarah. She paused, looked down, and quietly said, "It's okay, Daddy. I know she doesn't like me. I'm just trying not to make her mad." That broke me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Sarah and demand she explain herself. But I didn't. Not yet. I still held on to some kind of hope that I could fix it. But deep down, I think I already knew. The home I thought I was building was cracking right beneath my feet. One night, after Ella had gone to bed, Sarah sat me down at the kitchen table. She had that calm, serious look on her face, the kind she wore whenever she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. She didn't waste time. "I've been thinking," she started. "This isn't working." My heart skipped. "What isn't working?" "This setup," she said, gesturing around like our life together was a messy room that needed cleaning. "It's not balanced. We never really get time together. Everything revolves around Ella." I stared at her, unsure what she was trying to say. "She's my daughter. Of course things revolve around her." Sarah leaned back and crossed her arms. "Exactly. And that's the problem." That's when she said it. "What if we sent her to a boarding school, just for a few years? Let her grow on her own. Give us space to start building our real family." I thought I heard her wrong. "What?" "I mean it," she said. "This house, this life, it was built around a tragedy. I get that. But we need to move forward. We need to think about us. About our own kids someday. We'll never be able to do that if we're stuck in the past." My body went cold. "You're asking me to send my 7-year-old daughter away, to live with strangers. Because what? She's inconvenient." "It's not like that," she said quickly. "You're twisting it." "No," I said louder than I meant to. "I'm repeating exactly what you just said." She stayed calm. Too calm. "You're being emotional." "Of course I'm emotional," I snapped. "That's my daughter." There was a long silence between us. Her face didn't change. Mine probably looked like I'd just been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe she was serious. But the way she looked at me, like she was offering a completely reasonable solution, told me she meant every word. I heard a soft noise behind me. I turned. Ella was standing in the hallway. She had come out of her room. Maybe to get water. Maybe she heard us talking. Her small hands were clutching the sleeve of her pajama top. Her eyes wide. Her face pale. Sweetheart. I stood up, but she turned and ran back into her room. I rushed after her, but by the time I got to her door, it was shut. I knocked gently. Ella? It's Daddy. Can I come in? No answer. I opened the door slowly. She was already in bed, back turned to me, head buried into her stuffed cat. I heard, she whispered. I'm sorry I'm not real family. Those words hit me like a knife. I sat on the edge of her bed, tried to touch her shoulder, but she pulled the blanket tighter. I don't want to go to boarding school, she said quietly. You're not going anywhere, I whispered. I promise. But she didn't answer. She just stayed there, still and quiet. I sat with her until her breathing slowed, and she finally fell asleep. Her face was wet with tears. When I got back to the kitchen, Sarah was still sitting there, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, wondering how I had ever believed she cared about either of us. That night, I barely slept. I laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had ended up here, torn between the woman I married and the child I raised alone. The little girl who never asked for any of this. Something inside me shifted. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but one thing was clear. This wasn't love. Not the kind I wanted in my home. And maybe the family I thought I had was never real to begin with. The next morning, things were quiet. Too quiet. Ella barely looked up from her cereal. I sat across from her, trying to keep it together. Sarah walked around the kitchen like nothing had happened, humming while she made her coffee. She didn't say anything about the night before, didn't apologize, didn't ask if Ella was okay. I knew I had to say something. I waited until Ella went to her room to get dressed. That's when I looked at Sarah and said, No, she's not going anywhere. Ever. Sarah didn't even blink. She just took a sip of her coffee and said, Then we need to figure out what happens next. What do you mean? She turned to me slowly, like she'd been preparing this line for days. I mean, it's time to make a choice. You need to decide what kind of life you want. We can't keep living like this. I already made my choice. I chose to protect my daughter. She sighed and set her mug down hard on the counter. Mark, I'm not saying I don't care about her, but she's not my child. I didn't sign up to raise someone else's kid. And I want a real family. One that's ours. I felt a sharp burn in my chest. She is real. She is my family. Her face hardened. Then maybe this isn't going to work. She walked out of the room and left me standing there, stunned. That day, I couldn't focus at work. My hands shook every time I tried to type. I kept seeing Ella's little face at the kitchen table, trying to smile like nothing was wrong. I knew she felt it, even if she didn't understand all the words. When I got home, Sarah was sitting in the living room. Calm again. I'm serious, Mark, she said. I'm not going to keep living in a house where I feel like a second-class citizen to a kid who's not even mine. This is your final chance. It's me or her. The words echoed in my head long after she said them. I asked for time. I told her I needed a few days to think. She agreed, but her tone made it clear. This wasn't a request. It was a countdown. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed with 1,000 thoughts tearing through me. I looked over at Sarah, sleeping peacefully like none of this was heavy to her. And then I went to Ella's room. She was curled up under her blanket, stuffed cat tucked under her arm, breathing softly. I sat there watching her sleep and remembered all the nights I held her through fevers. The first time she said Daddy. The way she clapped her hands the first time she made pancakes with. Every memory of her felt like light compared to the dark pressure Sarah was putting on me. Still, I felt torn. I didn't want to destroy my marriage. I didn't want Ella to grow up seeing more people leave. The next day, I called my closest friend, Jordan. We'd known each other since college. He was one of the only people who had seen me raise Ella from the beginning. I told him everything. No filters. Just laid it all out. There was a long pause on the phone. Then Jordan said, I'm going to be real with you. You already know the answer. What if I lose her? I asked. You won't be losing anything worth keeping, he replied. You're dealing with someone who's trying to make you choose between being a husband and being a father. That's not love. That's control. I didn't say anything. Listen, he added. Your kid didn't ask for any of this. She didn't ask to lose her mom, to be caught in the middle of your love life, or to feel unwanted in her own home. Don't make her pay for someone else's cold heart. I nodded slowly, phone pressed against my ear, heart heavy. That was the moment I knew. The time for thinking was over. I had to make my choice, and I had to make it soon. 2 days later, I sat Sarah down in the living room. Ella was at a friend's house for the afternoon. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I had made my decision. She looked at me like she already knew what I was about to say. I've thought about everything, I began. I've gone back and forth, I've lost sleep, and I've tried to understand your side. But I can't send my daughter away. I won't. She's a child. My child. And she comes first. Sarah didn't blink. Her mouth tightened. I love you, I said. But if loving you means turning my back on her, I can't do it. That's when her face changed. Something snapped. Oh, of course, she spat. You're the victim. The perfect father. I'm just the evil stepmother, right? I didn't say that, I replied, trying to stay calm. No, but you think it, she said, standing up. You always think you're the better person. You've never really considered what it's like for me in this house. I gave up everything to be with you, and you act like I'm some outsider. You made yourself an outsider the moment you asked me to throw away my daughter, I said quietly. She stared at me like I had slapped her. I was trying to build something new, she hissed. Something better. But you're still stuck in your little daddy-daughter world. You'll always be alone, Mark. That girl will grow up, and then what will you have? You gave up a real family for a kid who's not even going to need you in 10 years. I stood up too. I didn't give anything up. I chose the only person in this house who actually knows what love is. She scoffed, then reached for her finger and slid the wedding ring off. She threw it on the floor. It bounced once, then rolled under the couch. I hope you're happy, she said. Because I'm done. She stormed down the hallway, grabbed her bag, and slammed the bedroom door. A minute later, she came back out dragging a suitcase behind. As she reached the front door, she paused. You'll regret this, she said. You'll regret choosing her over me. I didn't answer. I didn't look away. She left. The door slammed behind her so hard the picture frames on the wall rattled. I stood in the silence that followed. The air in the room felt heavy, but somehow lighter than it had in months. I walked to Ella's room and sat on her bed, waiting for her to come home. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but I knew one thing for sure. I had made the right choice. The first few days after Sarah left were quiet. Almost too quiet. The kind of silence that settles in after a storm, still but heavy. I'd find myself standing in the kitchen or sitting on the couch, just staring at the empty space where she used to be. Her shoes by the door were gone. The perfume she always used had faded from the hallway. There were no more sharp words or cold glances, but the absence still hurt. I questioned myself more than I'd like to admit. Even though I knew I had done the right thing, a part of me wondered if I'd blown up my life too fast. Maybe I could have tried harder. Maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe Ella deserved better than a father who couldn't even give her a whole family. But then I'd look at her. She was still quiet that first week. She didn't ask where Sarah went. She didn't mention her at all. But at night, she'd come into my room and climb into my bed, curl up beside me like she used to when she was little. She didn't say anything. She just needed to be close. I found a therapist who specialized in children and single-parent family. Her name was Mel. Kind voice, soft tone, patient eyes. At first, Ella barely spoke during sessions, just colored in silence. But Mel was gentle, and slowly, week by week, Ella started to open up. One day, she told Mel, I thought maybe if I was quieter, she'd like me more. That broke me. But Mel nodded and said, You don't have to be quiet to be loved. After therapy, we started going for walks. Nothing fancy, just down the street or around the park. We'd talk about school, her favorite cartoons, what kind of pizza to order on Fridays. I didn't push. I just let her lead. And little by little, she began to smile again. We made Saturday mornings our pancake day. She'd mix the batter, and I'd flip. Half of them were lumpy, and some came out burnt, but she didn't care. She'd giggle when one came out shaped like a weird blob and say, This one looks like a dinosaur. One evening, we sat on the couch watching her favorite movie. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, You didn't pick her. You picked me. I looked down, kissed the top of her head, and said, Always. Her eyes stayed on the screen, but I saw the corners of her mouth turn up in the softest little smile. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days. Nights when I sat with my own guilt and doubt. Moments when Ella would get quiet again for no reason, and I'd wonder if it would ever fully go away. But healing had begun. And in that silence, where once there had been tension and fear, there was now something else. Peace. About a month after Sarah left, I was doing some late-night cleaning. Not out of routine, more like restlessness. I found myself opening drawers, clearing out closets, throwing away things we didn't need anymore. That's when I found her old laptop. She had left it behind. I figured it was wiped or dead, but when I pressed the power button, it came to life. No password, just a quiet hum and her old desktop photo of some scenic mountain view we never actually visited. I didn't mean to snoop, not at first. I was just curious. But then I saw a folder on the desktop titled Receipts. That's when my stomach dropped. It was filled with PDFs, hotel booking, dinner reservations. Some went back 6 months. The names on the reservations didn't match mine. Some were for 2 guests, some for 1. But they were all in towns and neighborhoods she'd never told me she was visiting. I opened her email. I don't know why I did it, but something in me said to look. And there it was. A whole thread of messages between her and someone named Nate. The first few were subtle, flirting, jokes, vague mentions of meeting up. But as I kept reading, it got clearer. Much clearer. They had been seeing each other for months. One message from her read, I'm trying to be done with this whole stepmom life soon. He just needs a little push. Another one said, "Can't wait until I'm free and we can finally start over." No baggage. That was the word that hit me the hardest, baggage. She was talking about my daughter. I just sat there for a long time, reading everything, watching the truth unfold line by line, like a story I never agreed to be a part of. It wasn't about Ella. Not really. Sarah didn't hate her because she was loud or messy or emotional. She hated her because she was a tie to a life Sarah never wanted. She wanted to leave, but she didn't want to be the one to walk out first. So she gave me an impossible choice. She wanted me to take the blame. If I chose her, she'd win. If I didn't, she'd walk out and make it look like I pushed her away. It was all planned. The worst part, I felt relief. Relief because suddenly it all made sense. The cold looks, the comments, the distance. She had never been in this for Ella. Or for me. She was in it for the image. The clean, perfect family she thought she could shape if she could just erase the parts that didn't fit. I should have been angry, but mostly I felt numb. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Ella's gentle breathing down the hall. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Calculated. Cold. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that losing Sarah wasn't a tragedy. It was freedom. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I brought everything, screenshots, receipts, emails, all of it. I didn't want to hurt Sarah. I didn't want to start a fight. I just wanted to protect my daughter and close this chapter with honesty and peace. The truth was already heavy enough. I needed to make sure Ella was safe, and our life could move forward without more damage. With what I had, the divorce process was simple. My lawyer helped me file for full custody and secure our home, and Sarah didn't argue. She didn't try to fight for anything. It was clear she had already moved on, emotionally and physically. She signed the papers quickly, barely asked any questions. For her, it was just another step in the plan she had been making long before she said a word to me. But while she moved on, I started hearing things. Friends of hers. People we used to know. They were confused. Some had heard a completely different version of the story. In hers, she was the one left behind, treated unfairly. She left out the part about giving ultimatum. Left out the part where she called my daughter baggage. Left out the affair. So I wrote our story online. Quietly. No names, no cities, no photos. Just the truth. Every detail exactly as it happened. I didn't try to make her look bad. I didn't add anything. I didn't need to. The truth spoke for itself. People read it. It made its way around. Some recognized the story. I saw a few comments guessing who it was. And slowly, I noticed her image starting to change. People stopped reacting to her posts. A few mutual friends stopped calling. She faded out of our lives completely, and I didn't chase or stop her. That was never my goal. I just didn't want to carry the weight of a lie anymore. And with that part of our life behind us, Ella and I began to settle into something new. Something honest. We cooked dinner together more often. Simple meals like spaghetti or pancake. We brought home a hamster one afternoon from the pet store. She named him Mr. Cheese, and he lived in her room in a big plastic cage with tiny tunnels. At night, she smiled more. She laughed at silly jokes again. Her drawings came back, colorful, wild, and full of joy. I kept them on the fridge. Every single one. One night, we were on the couch watching her favorite movie. She was curled up next to me, head on my chest, when she looked up and said, "Daddy, I'm glad you chose me." I held her close and said, "There was never a question." She gave me a sleepy smile, and just like that, everything felt right. I didn't need to win. I didn't need anyone to lose. I just needed my daughter to feel loved, and to know she was never second to anyone. 2 years later, life feels calm, honest and full in a way I never thought possible. Ella and I still live in the same house, but it feels different now. Lighter, warmer. There's laughter in the halls again. Her drawings cover the fridge, the walls, even the back of my office door. She's doing well in school, making friends, and her therapist says she's opened up more than ever. We still have pancake Saturdays. Mr. Cheese is somehow still alive and just as chaotic. And every night, she asks me to tuck her in, even if she's already half asleep. A few months ago, I met someone new. Her name is Lena. She's kind, gentle, and patient. She never forces anything. She and Ella bonded over a shared love of baking and animated movies. No pressure, just genuine care. I'm not in a rush. I'm not trying to replace anyone or recreate something that's gone. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like we're growing something real. Looking back, I remember the moment I was told to choose. And I did. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. I chose love. I chose my daughter. And I chose right. I had to choose between protecting my daughter or saving a broken marriage. I chose her. Do you think I did the right thing? Let me know in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you think. And if you enjoy stories like mine, please subscribe and hit the bell.